And we're live.
Roll call in about a minute. Good morning and welcome to the March 3rd, 2021 edition of the Community and Public Services Committee. I will now do a quick roll call. Councillor Zadek.
I'm here. Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning. Councillor Nickel.
Good morning.
Good morning. And Councillor Knack.
There we go. Good morning.
Good morning. And I see we're getting a lot of people jumping in. We can hear those little chimes. So I would also like to extend a good morning to Councillor Henderson. And he may not want to extend one back. That's perfectly fine. I see we've also got Councillor Esslinger.
I'm here. It wanted me to admit someone instead, and it wouldn't let me turn my mic on, so I'm here. Welcome.
Good morning. And Councillor Esslinger, I think I heard your voice.
Good morning.
Good morning. And I see we've also got Councillor Banga. Good morning to you. And Councillor Mckee, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
And Councillor Cartmel.
Good morning. Never admit anything, Ben.
All right. So that's very, very good. I think I'll just, before we go into motions, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the traditional lands referred to as Treaty 6 territory, and that the City of Edmonton, all people here are beneficiaries of this Peace and Friendship Treaty. Treaty 6 encompasses the traditional territories of numerous Western Canadian First Nations, as well as the Métis people who have called this area home since time immemorial. And again, we are the beneficiaries of this peace and friendship, and the City of Edmonton is, as ever, dedicated to ensuring that the spirit of Treaty 6 is honored and respected. Okay, so with that in mind, would someone please move the adoption of today's agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. And I've got my e-scribe fired up. I hope you do too. And the clerks would prefer us to vote using the machine, so please vote.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not getting it coming up, so I'm a yes. Oh, here it comes. It's coming in now.
We have all the votes.
All right, please display the votes. And that is unanimous. Okay. Can I get someone to adopt the minutes, please? Move the adoption.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the adoption of the meeting minutes from the February 17th, 2021 Community and Public Services Committee meeting.
Thank you. I don't have any debate on that myself. If no one else does, then let us vote.
Councillor Zadok and Mayor Iveson, please.
I'm a yes.
Thank you. That's all the votes.
All right, please display the vote. And that is unanimous and carried. All right, we'll now move to selecting items for debate. And don't have anyone on the board, but oh, there we go. Councillor Nickel. Go ahead.
Thank you. I had a glitch there. So 6.6, 6.7, and 7.1.
Okay. Got it. And I believe 7 and 7.1 are cross-referenced as per our last meeting. So we've got that already taken care of.
Correct.
Any others? Okay.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm on the board. I just didn't want to.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Councillor Knack. Sorry, I missed your name there.
No. I just know we have speakers on item 6.2. So we'll select that. And I have questions on 6.4 and 6.5, but recognizing the tight timelines of the agenda, I'll select them, but with the intent that we might have to postpone them to a future meeting since we've got a lot of speakers.
Okay. Did you want to grab 9.1 while you were at it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. I will do that.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm not seeing any others. Okay, so what I've got here selected are.
All other items.
Oh, okay. And Mayor Iveson is moving all other items. Perfect. All right, so please vote.
We're just missing your vote, Mayor Iveson.
It hasn't popped up for me, but I'm a yes.
Thank you. That's all the votes.
Okay, so please display the vote. That is unanimous. So would the clerk please read back what reports have just been passed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This morning, committee has passed the following reports without debate. Item 5.1, transit tickets and no fixed address, revised due date March 24, 2021. Item 5.2, assisted transportation, plan of action, revised due date May 28, 2021. Item 5.3, youth opioid strategies and youth mental health survey results, revised due date August 25, 2021. Item 6.1, contractual reporting, semi-annual report, Edmonton Police Service. And item 6.3, joint dispatch center project charter.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, are there any councillor inquiries? I believe there is one.
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, go ahead.
So this is regarding designated drivers. We have a lot of good services in the city, as we know, and this is all about ensuring people get home safely. But I'm seeing some gaps in the bylaws and the legislation that I think we need to tackle in order to level the playing field and make sure we get the public safety outcomes that we want. So the inquiry reads that administration bring forward the current operational requirements within the city of Edmonton for providers of designated driving services.
Okay, and that sounds good to me. And now it is in the record. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, we've got our first item of business, which is the Hope Mission Project update cross-referenced with shelter operations and funding. So that's 6771. And I believe there is a presentation available if anyone needs it, and we probably should get it.
There is, Mr. Chair. For this item, I'll just introduce our team here from our administration, Jackie Ford, Branch Manager of Social Development, and our staff from our housing team who are here virtually, Crystal Kajener, Hanny Kwan, and Rachel Putt. We also have staff from our legal services area, if there's questions in that vein.
Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt, but we have just missed approving the request to speak.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I think you're muted still.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's something we certainly should not miss. I don't know if anyone has the list in front of them. I do. Okay, so I will move that we hear from the following speakers and panels when appropriate. On item 6.2, for Indigenous Culture and Wellness Center, 1, Karen Bruno from the Indigenous Circle, 2, Lloyd Cardinal from the Indigenous Circle, Beverly Allard, Ashlyn Yeloney, and Mackenzie Brown. For item 6.6, bylaw 19580, amendment to the Fire Rescue Services bylaw 15309, 1, John Adria, 2, Tyler Wilson, 3, Perry Logan, 4, Ron Schnitzler, 5, Betty Schnitzler. And then, last but not least, 4, shelter operations and funding, 1, Gary Saint-Amand, Jordan Reiniger, Dean Kurtjuit, and Susan Mckee. And if there's no debate on that, please vote to hear from those speakers at the appropriate time.
We have all the votes.
Thank you. Display the vote. And that is passed unanimously. And here I was thinking that I'd knock that out of the park. Okay,
And
so
just also the request for time specific, please, for 9.1.
I request for time specific, and we did have one request, and that was for 9/1. So I will move that we hear 9/1 at 11:45 a.m. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
And display the vote. And that is passed unanimously. Getting there slowly but surely. Okay, so now we can move to the first item of business, which was previously stated. So I believe there is a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report this morning, is in response to an inquiry from November 2020 that provides a summary of the state of emergency shelters in Edmonton for people who are experiencing homelessness. The report outlines best practices, outlines funding sources available to emergency shelters in Edmonton from various orders of government, and finally, a high-level summary of the different shelter models in our city. Report, as you indicated, is cross-referenced with 6.7, a report on Hope Mission that was originally slated to return to council last spring. This report outlines the efforts made by administration to work with Hope Mission and the Ministry of Community and Social Services to ensure the redevelopment of Herb Jameson meets the needs of all Edmontonians experiencing homelessness. With that, I'll turn it over to Jackie to walk through our slides.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Rob. As Council is aware, over 2,000 Edmontonians are experiencing homelessness. Just under half of the people who identify as homeless are staying in emergency shelters or sleeping rough. The remainder are provisionally accommodated in transitional or bridge housing or are couch surfing, which is staying with friends. In Edmonton, the provincial government primarily funds faith-based nonprofit agencies to deliver emergency shelter spaces. Administration has previously highlighted some of the barriers that prevent individuals experiencing homelessness from accessing those services. This includes fear for physical safety, overcrowding, an inability to store personal belongings, and a lack of 24/7 dignified sleeping options for individuals and couples. For individuals with complex health needs and addictions, a lack of integrated health support services and abstinence-based approaches to sheltering often means there is no emergency shelter options for them. These gaps in service are amplified by COVID-19. Staying home is not an option for too many Edmontonians. As a result, over the past year, the City of Edmonton has worked alongside the Government of Alberta, Homeward Trust, and agency partners to collectively address needs for space to deliver shelter services and implement additional shelter options that reduce some of the barriers based on previous research and evidence-based best practices from across the country. In order to be a successful intervention, emergency shelters should provide access to integrated health, income supports, and social service supports that link guests to permanent housing options. Emergency shelters across Canada are undergoing a transformation to embrace practices that adopt low-barrier policies and practices that are client-focused, trauma-informed, and that address individuals holistically. In Edmonton, some shelters are moving towards these practices, but there remains ongoing service gaps, which means not all people experiencing homelessness have a place to stay at night. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Jenner.
Thank you, Jackie. Prior to the pandemic, the Government of Alberta provided approximately $50 million to emergency service or shelter providers to deliver basic overnight shelter services across the province. Of that $50 million, approximately $10.1 million supports emergency shelter operators in Edmonton. Funding to shelters in Alberta is not calculated on a per-bed basis, but is instead provided to support overall shelter operations. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Government of Alberta has provided an additional $17 million allocated to shelter operations in Edmonton for the operationalization of new and varied shelter spaces across the city, including isolation supports and enhanced service delivery. In response to the need for day shelter service delivery, the City of Edmonton provided $5.1 million to partially fund operations at the Expo Centre from March to August of 2020. And as well, $8.5 million has been provided to the pandemic accommodation at the Edmonton Convention Centre, also known as Tipinawa, primarily through using the Municipal Operating Support Transfer Program, as well as supplemented by the Social Development Branch budget. And in addition to that $8.5 million, approximately $3 million has been provided to the Tipinawa operation from using FCSS funding and Homeward Trust Edmonton funding. Next slide. Operational models in Edmonton vary by agency. The housing programs and services offered to individuals are resource dependent. While most shelters have shifted to 24/7 services as a result of COVID-19, continuous stay beds where individuals have a designated bed space with associated storage that they can return to night after night are limited. This means clients have to redo shelter intake every night, and in some instances have nowhere to safely store their belongings during the day. There have been some positive changes as a result of the pandemic-related funding and in collaboration in response to the recent extreme weather activation, including a shift for most shelters towards a 24/7 model, as well as recently as last week, an increase in couples beds. However, the longevity of these changes is unknown at this point. Hope Mission provides the vast majority of provincially funded walk-up emergency shelter beds in Edmonton. Most spaces offered by these agencies are abstinence-based or do not allow substance use on site. This is a significant challenge for individuals experiencing homelessness who have substance abuse disorders. Shelter guests are expected to manage withdrawal symptoms independently when accessing shelter and often have no alternative but to leave the site to manage their illness or seek medical assistance. In-talk spaces for individuals who are under the influence of substances are consistently full. It is important to note that youth shelter services require a distinct approach that recognizes their unique trauma and health needs. In Edmonton, the Youth Empowerment Support Services is our primary youth-only shelter provider. Next slide. The City of Edmonton has provided operational, logistical, and financial support to the pandemic emergency accommodation at the Edmonton Convention Centre run by Boyle Street Community Services, Bissell Centre, and the Mustard Seed. Administration has worked alongside these agencies to mobilize Edmonton's lowest barrier shelter, which serves adults and youth of all genders 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In addition to essential services like showers and meals, Tipinawa delivers a number of wraparound supports, including housing services, medical support, mental health, addiction services, emergency overdose prevention services, and financial support. Cultural services provided by Bent Arrow Traditional Healing Society are also offered daily, including smudging to participants. And in January, they also hosted a drum making session, in addition to other supports that they provide on site. The accommodation shelters up to 350 individuals each night and is consistently at capacity. 1,000 meals are provided every day, and shower services are used by over 250 people daily. 188 unique individuals who formerly stayed at Camp Pekawewin have utilized Tipinawa, and shelter stayers frequently identify that they have experienced sleeping rough. Since opening, 417 unique individuals have been engaged in housing services, with 109 individuals connected to housing teams, 42 individuals referred to bridge housing, and 38 people having been housed permanently. The city is working closely with Homeward Trust to increase housing, and the Bissell Centre to increase housing outcomes over the remainder of the activation as well. And in conclusion, we have just an update related to the second report on Herb Jameson. So in early 2019, administration invited Hope Mission to participate in a shelter revisioning process for their Herb Jameson redevelopment alongside Homeward Trust and the Government of Alberta. A consultant with expertise in addressing chronic homelessness across North America was secured to evaluate the proposal. Administration also coordinated a visit with members of the Herb Jameson Redevelopment Committee to Calgary's Drop-In Centre to learn about their shelter transformation into a low-barrier housing-focused emergency shelter. In August 2019, the consultant presented its findings to Hope Mission. A full list of recommendations made to Hope Mission by administration can be found in Attachment 1 of the Hope Mission Progress Update Report. Some of the recommendations included providing laundry facilities for guests, secure storage space be provided in the underground to accommodate larger items, including shopping carts, and bikes and other items that might exceed carry-on storage capacity, that a common area for guests to socialize with limited TV hours and housing-focused activities be provided during the day, and that Hope Mission explore changing the use of the rooftop vestibule space from a garden to an expanded gathering space to be used explicitly as a smoking area. Hope Mission has made two notable changes to their design as a result of the revisioning process, providing additional storage space for guests and reconfiguring office space on the second floor to divide the sleeping space, which allows for clear sightlines and smaller, more flexible sleeping areas. The Government of Alberta has committed to assembling a service design committee that will include the City of Edmonton and Homer Trust to continue to provide recommendations on operations prior to the Herb Jameson Centre opening in the fall. It is not clear at this time what operational procedures, like continuous stay policies or medical services to help those with substance use disorders, may be adopted, but we will continue to have those conversations with our partners. This concludes our presentation, and we're happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. We will now move to speakers and hear from speakers. Now, if you have not been here before, each speaker will have 5 minutes to make comments. I'll run a timer, but you're strongly encouraged to run a timer yourself as well. Please refrain from using the chat function, as it sort of complicates things unnecessarily and may provide an unfair advantage to some over others. And we will begin with Gary Saint-Turmo.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me to participate in the conversation that you're having as council and that we're having as a community. I don't want to reflect on specific operations or partners. Really, my focus is to talk about some of the learnings that we have gathered as an agency over the last 110 years that we've been operating, but more specifically in the recent years as we've been reflecting on how we engage with folks who are experiencing homelessness in our community. And so I just want to share a few of those key lessons that we have gathered with you and affirm, I think, some of what we've been hearing from our community, but also in this report that's provided by administration today to council. So first I want to talk about size. Economies of scale is often a very effective way to address things when it comes from a business perspective, when you're dealing with widgets. When it comes to human beings, that is not necessarily a valuable approach to how we engage in this. And we need to think in ways that are at times counterintuitive from a systems and scaled level. I sometimes say, we can't see the trees for the forest. And, that flipping that is helpful to understand that at times, the nuance of what different types of trees need really create opportunities for us to think about how we engage that. So how are we making sure that there are diverse solutions for diverse populations? Spaces, for example, that are safe and accessible and inclusive for women, for members of the LGBTQ2+ community, and so on. We also need to think not only about size of the total, but also around how those are being provided. So in the realm of people sleeping on mats, in a warehouse setting versus semi-private or private settings that are helping people allow to be allowed to have the sense of safety and privacy and those things that are really dignifying for them. Thirdly, location matters. I think we really need to think carefully about where locations, shelters are located, impacts people's willingness to access those things. And then next, it would be culture. So as it was stated in the report, we have almost 50% of the people accessing services at Tipanawa are Indigenous. And so given that high percentage of Indigenous peoples in our shelter system, we need to, I think, not only think about how we provide access to cultural supports, but we need to ask how we should be thinking about our concepts of housing and shelter from an Indigenous perspective, and how are we standing with the Indigenous community and working alongside to support positive outcomes and reconnections to the community and to culture. I want to emphasize trauma-informed approaches as being a critical piece of our work, and we need to really think carefully about how services are provided and what accessibility means in those things. I won't repeat some of the other pieces around, pets, partners, privacy, and possessions, and those things in any kind of detail, but those are important. Finally, I want to just say that we really need to think about things from a system integration perspective, and so we need shelters that are housing focused. We need to make sure that we are sharing information, that we're coordinating supports. We're really privileged to have Homeless Trust as a backbone organization who has been long working in our community. We need to continue to ask together collectively how shelters are coordinated more fully into that homeless serving system. And then I would say we need to prioritize the voices of those who are living in the reality of homelessness right now. And I, think that we need to structure that into how we're evaluating what we're doing in different ways of gathering that feedback. And fundamentally, I think we all need to ask ourselves, if this pandemic had caused us to lose everything, what kind of shelter and homeless serving system would we want to be entering into ourselves? Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
And thank you very much. We will now move to Jordan Reiner. And if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, please let me know.
No, you got it right on there. Thanks, Aaron. My name is Jordan Reiner. I'm the Executive Director at Boyle Street Community Services. And I just wanted, before I talk about shelter specifically, put that in the context of what I think we sometimes miss, but that homelessness itself is a public health crisis. And we're dealing with the pandemic, but layered on top of or underneath the pandemic is this public health crisis of homelessness. And just one sort of meta-analysis of different studies demonstrated that people experiencing homelessness are 3 to 4 times more likely to die than those who are not experiencing homelessness. So the sort of mortality rate of homelessness itself is just a significant factor that we need to be thinking about, not from an ideological perspective, but really a pragmatic perspective, how we've dealt with this pandemic. What works, let's continue to do that. And what doesn't work, let's move away from that. And so we in the pandemic have started, in addition to our regular services, operated 3 hotels. We're also, as has been mentioned,
Well, it looks like Mr. Reiniger is frozen. And so while we look for a fix there, why don't we move on to Dean Kerpoit? And again, correct my pronunciation of your last name. I've never actually had to say it out loud. And we'll circle back to Jordan when we can.
Thanks, Kat. Don't worry about the last name. You actually did say it right, but I recognize it's not exactly Smith, so it's all good. Just first of all, my colleagues who are now my partners in Jordan and Gary have just been exceptional to work with, as well as the organizations. And I think one of the things that's out there is that we who service this sector don't collaborate, and the reality is we collaborate very well. We're in constant communication, our relationship, not just as agencies, but also with Susan at Homeless Trust, with Crystal in the housing department with the city of Edmonton. These are exceptional partners that are all pulling together in the same direction for the same end. And so with that in mind, one of the things that we've recognized as a shelter provider, currently we're involved in 4 different shelter locations across Edmonton, 3 on the south side, as well as the Edmonton Convention Center, is that from a system standpoint, the minute we feel that one size fits all, we fail. There is so many different needs out there and so much diversity that's required to meet those needs. With that, we believe as an organization that when we come alongside people and do things with them rather than for them, we see the most success. And so the larger it is, the more institutionalized it becomes, the more you require to do something for someone, and the less you're focused on walking alongside with them. So the smaller things are, the more intimate they are, the more you can walk into relationship with people. And when you walk into relationship with people, you hear their story, you hear where they're at, you hear their needs, you hear their concerns. It's at that point that we are then able to help them really understand where they're at and move them to a place where they are living a life of wellness and independence. So for us and for me, the shelter system is about more shelters that are smaller in various places across the city that are serving a variety of needs, from low barrier to high barrier. Some people need a high barrier shelter, which is something we don't talk about a lot. But the fact is if you want to live in or experience a shelter that is dry or is sober because you're trying to live sobriety, even though that you're homeless, you need to be in a place that's safe for you. The same hand, if you're dealing with addictions, you need to be in a place that's safe for you. And so all of these things matter in the way that we look at the system. The system is not a one size fits all, but the system instead, when it supports small, when it supports local, when it's embedded in community, and when it is shelter focused, we believe will result in more people being housed appropriately and in a faster way. So that's my encouragement to all of you when we think about the shelter system, is how does it lead directly into housing? But just as significantly, how do we make it small enough so that we get to know people on a personal level so that we can walk alongside with them rather than just setting up something that really is just for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll now move on to Susan Mckee.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I popped in a bit late. I was in another meeting, and I'm sorry to have missed part of my colleague's speaking comments. I think that what has resonated and what I caught of Dean's is the importance that you do have some really highly collaborative organizations that are working on this issue and trying to figure it out together and with the city. And I know that there's going to be a kind of a lot of a frontline lens too on the importance of what being housing focused is in all of this work. And I wanted to touch on a few of the things, though, that go back into the work that we've done around shelter standards generally and perhaps the role the city can play. I think that that's been a discussion that has often been deferred to kind of an operating agreement. And I do think that there are opportunities for the city to really, certainly with respect to the physical spaces and the operations of the shelters that operate in our community. I think there is a role for the city, and it doesn't necessarily have to be embedded in a funding relationship. I think we have many things that we do in our community, many service providers, many operations that meet the needs of folks that have to comply with certain expectations of that service, and we can get into those. And I think that some of that is, just really, really worth further exploring. And I appreciate, that discussion has come and gone around, major decisions going on in our community. And I think this is a really good time to start it again because we've learned so much in the context of the pandemic. I think that the administration report, around kind of the different elements that can touch on, and recognizing that we have shelters that have, from a policy lens, expectations that, that cascade to them. And I can say that through our funding going forward in the next upcoming contracts, we'll be having greater precision around expectations around human rights dimensions, anti-racism policies and complaint systems, so that we can really respond appropriately, and that we are not guessing around some of the spaces that really should be governed proactively. And we've had that historically around human rights language, but I think this last year has given us a much greater precision around how we need to articulate that and the recourse folks should have when we have publicly funded organizations, including my own. So, we're working on that certainly. And I think that there's an area where hopefully I think those conversations, and certainly there needs to be engagement around that, but I think that there's a lot that we can do better. Physical standards that we have experience within the case of the pandemic have resulted in clearly, better services to people when they are given additional space and they are, supported in having a better night's sleep. And sleep hygiene is something, quite frankly, I think the science behind it is so interesting, because this isn't stuff that we just have to, we're not guessing. There's actual real science around the neurology of, our ability to get through a day based on how good of a night's sleep we've had, and the accumulative effect of not having a good night's sleep on an individual, regardless of the reason, is just, it's not debatable. It's really just, that's fact, and there's science there. And I think that we should be thinking about that. And again, learning so much from the last year around how we can respond incredibly fast and change the way we do things because of the pandemic. Things like data, we've always struggled with the level of data that we have to do good system planning around a large population that relies on overnight shelters often, and in some cases for a very long period of time. We are now needing to screen folks differently in the context of the pandemic and follow up and certainly identify individuals that need isolation and support them. So we have a conversation now that's a little bit different than we had a year ago, and I think that set the table for even better use of the tools that we have available to us. And we have a lot of discussions that we've had with what is a housing orientation in terms of a shelter. And we've got shelters operating 24/7, and that's been a commitment of the province with some of the shelters that have been open in response to the pandemic, and I think that's been extremely important. I don't think we've defined as clearly as we can what 24/7 supports in a shelter environment can look like. It doesn't mean just being open during the day. What does that look like? And that maybe isn't in the domain of, going back to my original comment, that necessarily is about what the city's role can be prescriptive about. But we can't unsee what we've seen. And I think that access to space during the day is really, really critical. And it does require, and it has required, additional staff and funding. And in the pandemic, maybe there's been more accommodation of that, but the outcomes are really, really important in terms of just continuity and establishing relationships with folks. And so what does 24/7 mean, I think, is something that we collectively can get more into. And I think when we talk about housing orientation, I think Dean touched on it. I mean, it's not just that there is a program. We fund numerous shelter operators around the Housing First program directly, including Hope Mission and Mustard Seed and E4C. And how that work is done is really important. It's how the conversation's had. It's that engagement and providing an expectation around outcomes, not just outputs in terms of number of people that have been served or the number of folks that have been provided a place to sleep. And there's great resources for us to build on. Certainly, Toronto for years, early in our work to end homelessness, we referenced the Toronto shelter standards in working with the province early in the approval of that project. But
great.
I'm out of time. Sorry.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And I see that Jordan Reiner is back on. We had 2.5 minutes left. Did you want to take that last time, or are you okay?
I'll take it if that's okay. Sorry,
Yep.
my computer decided that would be the opportune time to shut down and do updates. So, I just wanted to say that the experiences of the pandemic over the last year, I think, have confirmed for us what we had inklings of before, is that the existing shelter system it isn't conducive to ending homelessness. In many cases, it's prohibitive. The sort of mass congregate sort of shelter where you can't sort of build relationships and connect with people. And there have been studies, Washington State, they did a study. They added semi-private and private shelter into the system, and the outcomes of that were pretty stark in comparison to the congregate shelter. 13% of people in congregate shelter ended up moving into permanent housing options, while the semi-private and private shelter options, 53% and 60% of people moved into more permanent housing options. So those outcomes are pretty dramatic. And so just imagine Edmonton, 40 to 47% more people moving out of the system into housing. I also want to say we did a sort of survey of our community members at Tippinawa and asked their preference around what kind of shelter they'd like. 75 out of 83 responded, said that they would prefer semi-private or private shelter. 3 said that they would prefer congregate, and 5 had no preference. But another point I want to make, and it's something Gary said, was that location does matter. And so 45 people said that they would prefer, they would choose their shelter based on the type of sleeping arrangement. But 38 of those 38 people said that they would actually choose it based on location. So they would actually take a less preferential shelter option if the location was right, because people have livelihoods and things like that attached to it. One of the things I want to touch on, a lot of things have been touched on before, but in terms of safety in the current shelter system, I think it's one of the things we don't talk about enough is the spiritual and cultural safety, given the number of folks that we serve who are Indigenous. One of the elders at Boyle Street said to me, we often talk about an overrepresentation of Indigenous people in these systems, but what we actually have is an overrepresentation of Western values, beliefs, and worldviews in the lives of Indigenous people, which has been happening for hundreds of years, but it's still happening now in the way that we treat people who are homeless. And I think that that the dignity of our folks can be better served using other shelter models, smaller shelters, semi-private, private, and Dean from Mustard Seed, they've been experimenting with semi-private. Obviously, the work that we've been doing on, using hotels. There are models that are showing there's a better way forward, and I think those are things that we need to focus on as a community moving forward. So I'll leave it there.
Great, thank you very much for that. And we'll see, we've got Councillor Mckee up to ask questions. I'll just check if any committee members were interested in asking questions first.
Councillor Paquette, I did exempt the item.
Pardon me?
I did exempt the item, Councillor Paquette. Can I go?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay, so I'm glad, first of all, everyone, thank you for all the work that you've done. As you probably are aware, I'm much more mechanical in my approach to the problems than some out there. And so the purpose of this whole my inquiry or my motion was to talk about minimum standards, to talk about a basic level of care and service to make sure that you're A, that we're meeting your needs, and B, that you have the flexibility within the system to address those cases. And I think it's been made very clear, and I agree with you 110% that everyone needs to be treated individually. But still, there must be some fundamental structural things that should be across the board that these people in need can come to expect, right? I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think anyone thinks that's unreasonable here. So, Ms. Mckee, you hit it right on the head. What does 24/7 support mean in the city of Edmonton in our shelter system?
So through the pandemic, we haven't had 24/7 shelters historically. Often the kind of arrangement with the shelter in their location is that they would close early in the morning and folks would then rely on other services throughout the day. And the pandemic really created the urgency of allowing people to either stay where they were and receive supports there, and or at least be able to plan their day differently in terms of when they would leave. Now, that hasn't been universally the case at every shelter in terms of, we've had a contraction of what's available during the evening, and that's really what I'm pointing to, is that, just saying that we're open 24/7, but still having 20% of our physical occupancy, what does that look like? And we have examples nationally and certainly throughout the shelter system in North America, where transformation approaches with shelters have really identified what those services are during the day, and really having that housing focus and having engagement of individuals during the day so that they can do the work of finding housing, and that they can also be connected with services internally. So
yeah, and so the impression I'm getting is 24/7 means different things depending on different facilities and different. It's just there is not really a kind of a standard understanding of that.
There isn't, but there are best practices for sure.
Yeah. Oh no. I'm not disagreeing with that, Mr. Reiner. You use the word prohibitive. The shelters have become prohibitive in nature, and it says here in the report, safety is a concern, which is at the top of the list, right? Obviously, if people are not feeling safe, that it's got to start there. Can you give me the wrap around why on some of the issues around safety? Is it the intake? Is it the room? What is the mechanical issues of safety that you're facing a challenge with?
Thanks. I think that it's when we think about having 300 people, for instance, in one room who have complex needs, you have challenges around managing the people, chaos management, safety management. There could be different fights breaking out. There's different things that happen in that space, and so people fundamentally don't feel safe with that. So I think it's an issue, as Gary from Bissell was saying, of the scale of it, that to manage a group of people that large is just not, especially when we're talking about complex need, creates a lot of challenges around safety.
I agree with you. This assembly line approach of throwing 300 people in a room that have challenges, I think that's madness, to tell you, to be quite honest. I think it's madness. And so the question that I got to ask this question because, Councilor Mckee and I were talking offline last week. I'm a severe insomniac. I have severe apnea. I sleep sometimes only 2-3 hours a night, sometimes for a couple of days, as my colleagues know that I get quite cranky. And I apologize, folks, for that. Getting a decent night's sleep is something so basic that I've come to understand. What happens here? I am understanding they get in and then we move them out at 6 a.m. Is this the fact? Is this the mechanic that I'm dealing with here? And does that make any sense? Because if anybody needs more sleep, it would strike me these folks do, right? And that's out to everybody if anybody wants to comment on that.
Yeah, I'll just say it's a function of, depending on 24/7, sometimes people are able to stay and they don't get kicked out right away. But sometimes they have to move on. But it's also a function of the environment and not being able to get a good sleep in the environment, right? So it's not a place where you can actually get into a deep sleep and have a decent sleep. So you might have 6 or 7 or 8 hours there, but the actual amount of sleep you'll get there will be an issue. So, as you say, sleep deprivation being an issue, especially when you're dealing with mental health issues, substance use issues, all of these things compound to make it almost debilitating. So,
okay, I'll come back on a second round, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Councilor McKee, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you, Mike, for your questions. They're very astute, and I certainly commiserate on lacking a good night's sleep sometimes and what it can do to our mood and function. Imagine that happening day after day after day when you have underlying mental health, perhaps addiction issues. I'm really glad we're having more of an adult conversation here today, an honest adult conversation. I'm intrigued with the idea of smaller dispersed shelters. I know that in Oliver we have an organization that caters to homeless LGBTQ youth, and if memory serves, they talked about 100 of them who did not feel comfortable going to the main shelter in Edmonton, the Hope Mission shelter. So I guess the question is, how do we get there? And would Mustard Seed, Boyle Street, and Bissell be interested in operating smaller shelters somewhat dispersed around the city in areas where we know homelessness is an issue? Let me start with you, Gary. Is that something that Bissell should be getting involved in?
I think that we need to, as I said earlier, provide a diversity of responses to support a variety of different needs. And I think that, Bissell Center has been a willing participant, as has Mustard Seed and Boyle Street, to say, what is it that we need to do, or what in what ways can we contribute to ensuring that those solutions are met. And so I would say, yes, given the right set of circumstances in terms of making sure that the shelter is actually something that's contributing to ending homelessness, then for sure, Bissell Center would be interested in participating.
So Dean or Jordan, how do we get there? How do we get there from a proposal to rebuild a large industrial shelter to something where we have a dispersed model with smaller shelters?
I think, for us, or for what we're seeing, it's a willingness to invest in smaller places. The fact of the matter is we all know the smaller it is, the less cost effective it is. The difference between a 20-person shelter and a 40-person shelter from a staffing standpoint is no different at all.
Although cost effectiveness has to include calls for service and other issues related to homelessness, which can be very expensive.
Absolutely. But we all know, I'm assuming we all know, the cost effectiveness of housing somebody is the most cost-effective thing we can do.
Right.
So if you invest right on the front end and invest small on the front end, at the end of the day, you're going to save lots of money because we can house people faster. So the women's shelter running on the south side of Edmonton is small, and it's extremely effective in housing people. We house people out of there within weeks from opening up. Yeah. And just because we got to know them. So it's that commitment to being able to do it and say, this is the way to go. That our homeless population isn't just in the downtown core of Edmonton, it is dispersed throughout Edmonton. And so where it's dispersed, let's start small and let's start unique.
Yeah. Jordan, I wanted to give you a chance. I'm going to ask about whether or not the city of Edmonton will have the legal authority to create its own shelter standards that might help towards that. If we could even get into size in our shelter standards. But Jordan, do you have thoughts on how do we get there from here? Because this has been a tough nut to crack, to get shelter standards, to get smaller shelters, to get ones that are more equitable, that respond to the people's spiritual needs, perhaps. How do we get there? What are your thoughts?
I think minimum standards are incredibly important, so there is sort of at least a baseline. I think, given that we do have this large investment, for instance, in Hope Mission, this big facility, to the extent that we can encourage, smaller communities within a bigger space. So, segmenting in a way so that you kind of create smaller shelters within a larger shelter. I think that, given where we're at, might be sort of one option to sort of explore. And I think, some of the things around, can we turn some of those bigger shelter spaces that we have, can we turn them into sort of semi-private and places that people could actually maintain some of their stuff and have a bed and those kinds of things, some of the things that Dean has been working on the south side there. So I think there's, within the existing system, ways that we could explore sort of making some shifts that would be meaningful.
Thanks for that. I might come around, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Zadek.
Thank you. I want to ask a few questions around the 24/7 nature of the discussion. So I've done my volunteering here and there, not too frequently, but at Hope Mission, where I work on food prep for lunch, and I get the desire that you don't want a large lineup of people inside the shelter while you're doing those final preps for serving lunch, because it's pretty hectic with the mass amounts of food. I also understand that you're going to want to mop the floor and stuff and clean up a bit after folks have slept there overnight. But if I've been aware that folks are asked to leave the shelter, all the shelters, around 6 or 7 in the morning, typically. What's stopping us, while we study the idea of 24/7, what's stopping us from immediately looking into allowing people to stay there till 8 or 9 a.m. just as a transition to get some learnings from that and decide if we want to go further? Anyone can respond to that. Why, if we think 6 is too early, why not immediately start talking at 8 or 9 a.m.?
I think from Mustard Seed and Dean's perspective, Councillor, there's probably some really operational shifts that they can really contribute to that on. And I would say shortly, briefly, there's nothing stopping us, and it has in fact been something that has been implemented during the pandemic. I think that what we need are some outcomes associated with that, and that it's not just about keeping the doors open and what that looks like. And to be clear, I mean, the kind of things that you've referenced, if an organization, any of us, have operated in the same way and we're trying to tweak it, a lot of times it's a lot harder to tweak something than really to rethink it. And so if we're rethinking how that same facility or any facility can offer food and have cleaning scheduled. And there's good resources to reference, but it's probably going to require not just kind of tweaking an existing model, but really rethinking it.
Thank you. And I'm not going to argue, because you work in this sector, and I'm, with all this stuff I do, quite interested in this. And I do think sometimes small steps are important. And instead of rethinking everything and then one day just cutting the ribbon to a new model, I would encourage the folks on this call to consider allowing an extra hour and seeing how that goes, and then allowing 2 extra hours and seeing if you can still get in the requisite cleaning and allowing space for volunteers for cooking. But yeah, no, thank you. And thank you to everyone for what you do. This is obviously a big issue, and I appreciate the leadership on this council who have really brought this forward to my attention. When I started here 3.5 years ago, it wasn't top of mind for me, although always a concern. I've really been exposed to really fascinating and troubling data on this, and just thanks everyone for what you do on this.
Can I answer one of the questions directly? Please. About that release time. That did exist at one of our shelters on the south side of Edmonton. It no longer exists. There was just a conflict with a daycare also in the same building. But we since are keeping people till 9 a.m. there now, and have been doing so this winter. So that was kind of a last year thing. And it was a problem. It wasn't good. But to reemphasize this, 8, 9 a.m., 10 a.m. is better. But if we want to house people, we need 24/7. You do not want to talk to a housing person right before breakfast or right after breakfast. You want to do that, and during your day period. And the concept of overnight only. Again, you're not interested in a housing person at 2 a.m. You're interested in sleep. And so that 24/7 and having a place for people to go all day makes a major impact on the work we can do with them to help them get housed.
Well, then conversely, I would be interested in even allowing them to come in for the overnight period half an hour to an hour earlier. And so that they're not just ready for bed, but they're still ready to socialize and talk a bit. But thank you. I appreciate that additional clarity and the fact that your shelter has looked into this a little bit. That's all.
All right. Thank you very much. Mayor Iveson.
Well, since you're all here, first of all, thank you, Dean and Gary and Jordan and Cheryl, who's not on the call, but everyone who stepped up at TP Noel. It's been quite an undertaking. I think we've learned a lot, and we heard a little bit from you this morning about some of the scale challenges. I mean, I think we did it as an emergency response, almost more like a natural disaster response than a sustainable solution. I think this is a real good opportunity to pivot, to figure out what's the shorter term and more optimal solution based on everything that we've learned, while we get to the longer term solution, which is housing for everyone who needs it. So we run out of funding and begin to wind down to Pinawa at the convention center over the next 8 weeks or so. And as we think about the spring and summer until the 400 spaces come online in the fall, I guess maybe to Dean first, what are you hearing from GOA about continuity for the spaces you're already providing and stand up of other interim spaces over the summer? Because there is funding now for some spaces. I don't know if that's prorated for the opening of Hope in the fall, but in the meantime, are there some dollars to work with folks like yourself and the other partners and Hope to stand up some interim beyond the conference center and complementary to what you're doing?
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great question. So our expectation is that we will have funding for 100 spaces on the south side of Edmonton, and that will carry on probably till the end of September. All of this is not on paper, but it's through conversations, and we certainly are securing spots right now to make that happen.
Okay. Well, and I really appreciated your comment about, the diversity of needs, and that you need, all the different, I think barriers is a tricky way to talk about it, but degrees of safety and comfort for people based on their different needs. And you put it really well with, needing to see the trees for the forest, that each individual here has different needs. And it reminded me of at the supportive housing, once we get people from shelter to housing, that's even the case at Ambrose, where it is managed alcohol, but one floor they described as wet, one floor they described as damp, and one floor they described as dry, because people are on that journey, right, and have different needs. So that point's very, very well taken. Maybe to Jordan, you mentioned you're up and running 3 bridge hotels now. How do you see your organization's role changing in the future? I mean, you're not an overnight shelter provider. You're a day program provider historically, but sounds like you're increasingly want to get into the housing business. Is that consistent with where you see the puck going from a long-term policy perspective with the federal goal to end chronic homelessness, et cetera, et cetera? Where do you see your organization playing in this space over time?
Yeah, we've been thinking about that. When we had, typically in our drop-in, 3,500 square feet, we could have up to 250, 300 people there. Really, when the pandemic hit, we had to reduce to 45. And that is also, this isn't just about the shelter and us thinking about the changes to the sheltering model, but also us rethinking our own way of working. And so when you think about hotels and supporting people in housing, so rather than having 200 people in our drop-in, how can we sort of transition at least 150 of those into a hotel or into some sort of transitional accommodation and support them there to kind of move into permanent housing? And that's where we see ourselves going, is that we'll still need that sort of drop-in space, the daytime shelter. That's still going to be important because there's still people coming into the system. But how quickly can we move them from that space into a space that is conducive to moving them towards permanent housing? And that's kind of where we want to focus all of our energy.
Awesome. And Susan, last, what are the mechanisms you're aware of that cities have used to coordinate and require minimum standards? What are the best practices out there that you're
I know that that's a large question, and I do want to make sure that we follow it up with more than I'll offer today. But certainly, there's been really great work done in BC and Ontario, and specifically Toronto for years has had standards, and they've continued to iterate those. So just the physical space and the recognizing that not all spaces can be built out the same way, but having within their system expectations of greater privacy, where belongings can be stored, various expectations that help reinforce the ability for people to get a good night's sleep and then connect with the appointments that they may have either in the shelter or with other providers during the day. There's certainly, they're in the space of kind of expected performance, standards of performance. So not so much just in the policy, but when they're contracting, their standards of performance. And that's where some of the things that come in around things like human rights and how organizations institutionalize within their operating, treating human beings appropriately and really supporting them in a transition to something better. So those standards are areas where, and I know that Toronto can be a tough example because Toronto does play that direct relationship through funding as well. But I do believe, like, if we really kind of looked at different ways that the city of Edmonton, is involved in setting standards for lots of businesses. I mean, I don't think we just need to kind of stick within our sphere here to look for examples where the city has influenced the way work is done and how services are delivered to find some opportunities to do that.
Something you said was very helpful there. I'll follow it up with administration. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, I just wanted on a slightly different tack, but it's something that I thought was worth flagging, and a kind of secondary benefit of being able to get to more of a 24/7 model. And it really goes back pre-pandemic. And Dean, you'll probably remember part of this. It was some of the conversations we had around the drop-in of the neighborhood center on the south side. And what became really clear to me was, in terms of its ability to function well within the community, the problems were not when it was open. The problems were when it was closed. And the community had nowhere to go. And as a result, it created friction with neighbors. It did all those things that everybody's most afraid of. To me, I always felt the real solution was getting neighborhoods sending more money so that it could stay open longer. But it seems to me if we can get to this, we heard this on Monday, in terms of people's perception of what's going to be happening around buildings. And I just wonder if you can speak a little bit about it, because it seems to me being able to support the community that's using the space properly so it's there and can function as a community benefits everyone around it. It's my impression, of Hope Mission. The problems around Hope Mission is the lineups of everybody waiting to get in. It's not when it's actually open. And that's the friction that happens with the neighborhood. And I'm just wondering, I know it's a secondary benefit, but I'm just wondering if you can speak to that at all. Because I think there's some lessons to be learned there in terms of the real benefits and advantages to everybody of being able to provide not just funding properly, full 24-hour support.
Yeah, no, and totally appreciate that. We've got I think probably most of you know, we have a development permit in place at the Neighbor Center to expand it so that we can provide 24/7 services there. And so, as that goes through, our hope is to build a facility that can accommodate people all day, every day, because we recognize the minute we shut our doors, we cause a problem for our community that surrounds us, and that's unfair to them. And what we want to do is have a place for people to go, and what we also want to do is be good physical neighbors to those that are around us. And when you're only open a couple hours a day, sometimes in your desire to help others, you might be causing problems for someone else, and it really isn't ideal. It's less than ideal. So totally appreciate that. And honestly, it all comes down to two things, right? The permitting process to get what we need built. And then the second thing is the funds and the resources.
Working with Chris for a number of years, it was always a funding issue. I know that. And I think I raise it only because I think there's a kind of message back to us to understand. And I realize it's not just us. I think it's all orders of government that we can say all we want about good neighbor agreements, but unless we're prepared to fully and properly fund these operations to be open enough time, it's going to be very hard to deliver on that, because the problem is not when you're there to be good neighbors, it's when you're not there. And I think we need to recognize that. And I think that's a secondary benefit of this kind of conversation we're having around 24/7. I just wanted to flag that a little bit, and I don't know if anybody else has any thinking on that. But I realize it's sort of secondary, but it's also, I think, useful to keep in mind. So thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Henderson. We'll now move back to Councillor Nicol on the second round.
Well, Councillor Henderson was a great segue into the question of public funds and minimum standards. And I think that is what the crux of what we're trying to deal with here today. That was the point of my inquiry, is that you judge us by how compassionate we are to the less fortunate. That's just the nature of what we do. So the question I'm going to put out to the shelter folks is the issue of minimum standard. Now, Mr. Reiner points to that he's got a room of 300 people. I don't think that's a great standard. I think that standard should be much, much smaller, right? For example, I'm just giving you a tangible structural example of how maybe the city or somehow we can say, no, you can't have 300 people in this room. You can only have 50. So provincial government and city, we have to find other things, right? If that leads to a better outcome. So I just want to I have a motion here to talk about minimum standards to do a follow-up. But I'd like each of you to comment on, or some of you to comment on that need and how these minimum standards could help you drive a better model, not just for the clients, but also for the community that you exist in. Because as you know, we do have issues because of how the operational, the model works, because of the standard that you are under, there are consequences out to the greater community and not just to your clients. So these are the issues I'm trying to get at, something very mechanical, something very structural. And then there are also things we can encourage in terms of standards, even though they're beyond our control because they may lay with another agency, order of government, and so on. So I don't know who wants to take that, but I do think, like Councillor Mckee suggested, we have to have a real adult conversation about the minimum standard. And it's not about punishing shelters, what I'm trying to say here. It's about helping shelters, right? So we have something that we can tangibly fund for these outcomes. So I don't know, does somebody want to, in a don't you think kind of response, want to provide comment to that? Oh, you're all so quiet.
Well, I could talk. I mean, I think that minimum standards is a very important thing. You know, I think to Dean's point, the challenge when you have different orders of government funding different things and different standards coming in is, you know, you can put a minimum standard in, but do we have the funds to actually execute on that standard? And that's ultimately the challenge. But I think a conversation around what those minimum standards should be would be a really important conversation for us to have as a community, to say this is the bottom line in terms of how we want to be treating people and the dignity we want to provide to people and the outcomes that we want to see. We have to have, this has to be what's in place, and then we can use that as a leverage to kind of go and say, well, this is the funding we're going to need to execute on that, right? So,
and Mr. Reiner, you're hitting it. So let's say we need we're all saying 24/7 facility, okay? So what are the minimum standards to get that 24/7 facility? And even though we may not have the money today, my argument would be is that's the outcome we need to shoot for tomorrow in terms of funding, structural supports, and so on. Does that make sense? Defining the outcome of what you think the ideal is mechanically. And I'm just dealing with shelters now. I remember this. I'm just talking about the shelters right now, and we'll talk about the other stuff later. But I think we need to stabilize a minimum standard situations for your operations. Strikes me as something that's common sense or required. I don't know how you feel about that.
yeah, I think that makes sense. I maybe would let Dean respond to that because we only operate the overnight shelter at Tipinawa, so he might have better comment on that.
Thanks for that, Jordan. By the way, Councillor Nickel, with your insomnia, I'm always looking for overnight staff. So just keep that in mind.
I tried to take that tour, but you kicked me out because of COVID.
Well, you know, I think it's interesting for when I say here minimum standard, what I hear is what is the philosophy of the shelter? So for me, the minimum standard of any shelter that we put up is it housing focused? That's the minimum standard. Like that's the baseline. Or do we exist to provide a place for people to go, or do we exist to provide a place for people to get happy?
This is my last seconds, Dean. We've had this conversation about what's behind the previous shelter. When I asked you how many times a day you were feeding folks, you were only you were only able to feed them once a day. That doesn't work for me. I got to feed these people 3 times a day because that's a better outcome.
I'm agreeing with you. And so like the baseline is, are we housing focused? In order to be housing focused, we need to be 24/7. We need to provide wraparound care on site. Like, and all of it builds out of that. At what size does that become problematic? You know, once you start pushing over 100, it becomes problematic. You become focused on the institutionalization of things. You become focused on security. You become focused on safety rather than focused on the individual. And so those are some of the things that we're learning as we go on. The shelter running out of Trinity Lutheran, you're absolutely right. They got breakfast. That was it. What we're doing at Cesco is 3 meals a day. At the women's shelter on the south side is 3 meals a day. We're there 24/7. And we're seeing the impact that has.
All right. Thank you very much. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I think I know is that environment impacts behavior. And if you're forced to line up to get into the shelter, sometimes in brutal cold weather, if you're evicted from that shelter before 7 in the morning into a world where nothing else is open. If you're forced to sleep on a mat on the floor next to hundreds of other people, I could go on, but that impacts the behavior of the individual and the way they interact with the community. Would you agree with that, Jordan or Dean or Gary?
Yeah, I think, would agree wholeheartedly. 24/7 is a really critical piece, but it's not the only critical piece. And we need to really, I think about that as we move forward in this. So at Bissell Center, we had our drop-in day services shelter, that was operating for many years under that kind of a sanctuary model, to use the Toronto drop-in network's language, and really shifted to a model that asked the question about how might people move forward? Are we being intentional as an organization about supporting those people who want to move forward? And so transitioning our physical space actually resulted in dramatic changes in outcomes for folks. So for example, we had about 6 times as many people accessing programs and services that post doing that change in model to the previous model. And so now people were getting connected with employment supports or cultural supports or other things at a much more significant level. And so I think those things are really critical. And if I could just add to an earlier part of the conversation, one of the things we can think about is, the sort of, if the carrot and stick idea, if there's one side of this model that is about minimum standards and this is what we're requiring, but there's some pieces that are outside of our influence in terms of mandating things, what are the opportunities to build a coalition of the willing and to add carrots to, if we're already doing this work, the city might insert a certain specific set of funding to support a group that wants to do something that's more housing focused, that provides a specific, trauma-informed lens, those kinds of things. And so how do we sort of compound the investments for work that's already happening that helps shift that trajectory into the standards we want to achieve?
Good point. Susan, we just had a hearing before committee with Westmount folks on the supportive housing facility that's going in there. And I understand the public engagement on that facility going into Westmount will be pretty significant. So people will be able to comment on all sorts of things. Maybe be able to comment on, or at least ask questions on the operations, how it'll operate, staffing levels, all that sort of thing. What I've heard from Mckee community and from Chinatown is there's been no such opportunity in regards to the Hope Mission project. Can you comment on why we have not had that sort of public engagement?
Certainly not on behalf of the operator. Right? I've heard the same thing, and when we hired Orco to engage with a consultant on their plans a couple of years ago, that was reflected. We did facilitate some meetings, but quite frankly, it was literally at the time that the approval for the planned development was approved. So it was a bit of trying to deal with the horse leaving the barn. But at the same time, we did engage separately, and we pivoted to engage the broad community on shelters and shelter, a housing-focused system, and still had engagement and included many more operators in that. So there was discussion, and it was facilitated less on the site requirements that we're experiencing now as we roll out supportive housing across the city. And I think the reason is that it wasn't a requirement. And the engagement that we're doing with Westmount and other sites is because the city has proactively committed to doing this kind of engagement in addition to what would be required, because it's not a...
And I would argue that's a minimum standard the city of Edmonton has created for projects like that, because the Westmount one, there was no rezoning. There was no need or no statutory requirement for public engagement, and yet we're doing that as a minimum standard in our community, and the Hope Mission project did not meet that minimum standard. Those are the kind of questions that I want to ask administration, Mr. Chair. Only a piece of suggested advice would be to requisition this up to council so we can ask our questions of administration there, because I know you have a tight agenda. I'll stop there though and leave that as unsolicited advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKee, and thank you for everyone who asked questions. And I do understand that we are tight on time, but I might ask just one question, and that is, given that we've got sort of a multi-pronged challenge here: one, make shelters that work, and two, eliminate the need for shelters. Dream scenario. What can we do? That's the question. Okay.
Well, I guess I'll just say that it's what we're talking about. It's about having housing-focused shelters, right? Like the challenge that that we see, and there's been incredible success in the community in terms of housing people, right, over the last 10 or 11 years. But the people still enter that system. So we need to continue to have those systems that quickly move people from an emergency situation into some housing. And, particularly we have a whole bunch of people who should frankly be in the health system being supported more effectively there, who are kind of stuck in this emergency shelter kind of world. And so I think the real, it's a bigger system question in terms of making sure the right systems are actually addressing the challenges that this community is facing, and having emergency shelters actually just be emergency shelters for those short-term sort of stays where we can move people into something else. So,
yeah, do you mind if I add Councillor Paquette into the committee? I just a bit of a reframe. I think my experience over the last 15 years as we've worked towards the plan to end homelessness language is sometimes when we talk about eliminating shelters or the need for them ever, is that we kind of polarize solutions and we polarize conversations. And I think that we can aspire to that and also, kind of think about different language. And I was just, working with some folks and trying to apply different types of ways of thinking about the problem that we have to solve and how we get apprehensive about committing to ending homelessness because we sometimes think we never can. And I would say that their shelters play a role in an entry point into a system that should respond really quickly. So homelessness is, rare, brief, and non-recurring. However, they do provide that, and people do have a housing crisis. But it's like if we think about safety and planning for safety on a manufacturing floor or in other environments, we don't have a tolerance level of two deaths a year. We don't plan for that acceptability. So I think it's helpful to kind of think about how we define what we're trying to do when we're trying to end homelessness, and avoid kind of losing people in absolutes when we actually can kind of think about ways that's how I think. I think we also don't, when we have a safety plan, when somebody does die, we don't throw it out and give up and say, well, that wasn't working. So I'm just offering a bit of a different perspective in terms of what our experience has been over the years. Is when we talk about closing shelters completely, and we're standing here literally, some of the rest of my day will be about recognizing that we have a major concern over the summer because we need more shelter spaces, or we're going to have a lot more people in encampments and on the streets. So I just would offer that. I think it's important to have that goal really clearly stated in ending homelessness, but then to also recognize that it is a system, and we're all trying to optimize that system for the better health of everybody and to not lose people along the way.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I would contend that we can solve this. It's a matter of political will, not from the city, because we're already there. We can solve this. If we wanted to see shelters absolutely transformed from a warehousing sort of mentality that we get from some levels of government to simply a place where people walk through the door and they end up in a home. Maybe even that same day, that same week, that would be the ideal for me. And frankly, I think that we can do it and we should be doing it. But if anyone else wanted to make a comment, that's fine. But I see we've got two more names on the board, so I don't want to take up too much time. No, okay, so we'll move to Mayor Iveson.
So I think the suggestion of requisition makes sense, because I think we'll burn all the time otherwise, and I think there's council interest in this. But I have one more question for the folks who are here that may be a little bit awkward, but I have to ask somebody since Hope Mission is not here this morning. is Hope Mission operating housing-focused shelters? Maybe it's not fair to ask you folks to evaluate that, but perhaps how would we know, or what questions should be asked ultimately by the funders primarily at the government of Alberta, but also in our, because I've heard all of you commit to housing focused shelter delivery. How would we know that is what is happening, particularly with the 400 units that are slated to open up this year?
So I'll answer your question pretty directly without, making a comment on Hope Mission specifically. I don't think you can be housing focused when you have a sort of a mass congregate shelter of that size. Like, I just don't think, I think your focus is on people management, it's on security, it's on, managing that number of people. So I think even if you had, regardless of the operator, it's like we've had that experience at Tippinawa. There has been great housing outcomes that have come from that. But it's really hard to engage people when you've got that many people in a space and you're just trying to manage it. So I think it's no comment on Hope Mission specifically, but just saying, I don't think that it's really possible for anybody to do that well with that number of people in a facility. So I guess I would say that.
So, and that's direct experience based on scale challenges that we face learning from Tippinawa.
And it's experience also from us at Boyle Street, right? When we do have that winter warming experience of having, 200, 300, 400 people in our little drop-in space, we can't engage with people. It's just about managing the security and managing the chaos, right? And so I just think it's not just about Hope Mission, it's about all of our sort of programs and how we're thinking through doing that differently.
And may I offer a comment, Mayor?
Please.
From I guess some hopeful position, actually, Hope Mission, together with Maurice Roca at the time and Jasper Place, in the first year of our plan in homelessness, was the first project we funded in the rapid housing project, and we continue to fund them to have housing staff within their organization. And I think that work is frustrated by the issues that Jordan has mentioned, and there was welcome kind of involvement in the process when we engaged with the Calgary drop-in, and we engaged some of the board members of Hope Mission to participate in those discussions about having a housing-focused organization. And so I'm hopeful that those things can lead into organizational change. And I would just acknowledge too that this is an organization that's been around for a very, very long time. Making those changes culturally in an organization is incredibly helpful when some of them are expected and not just self-motivated. So I think that there's been evidence of commitment there, but I do think defining it better is going to help them as well.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Nicol.
My questions are for administration.
Okay. So I will just finish up with my questions. And again, it's going to be an awkward one, and I'm okay with that. I hope you are as well. But given that a number of the folks experiencing homelessness in Edmonton are Indigenous in some way, there's a tendency to look at them as maybe less fortunate, or man, that's a school of hard knocks right there. When in reality, this is a systemic result from systemic practices. This is intentional, and this is the result. And now we are left cleaning up after poor decisions in the past, and some of which still echo to today. And the mindsets and, frankly, the stereotypes and the bias behind that extend to today. And one of the contributing factors was the replacement of one cultural system and one set of beliefs or worldviews with the attempted, assimilation into another. And we see in some cases that's still happening. And that ideology is actually hampering efforts and causing more trauma and more problems. So how do we approach this situation with that in mind? That this is not just something that happened. This is something that was planned, and these are the results.
That's a very incredibly fundamental and an important question, Councillor. And I will not have a concise or easy answer, but I do think that that intentionality that you're describing requires an equal intentionality in countering it and reversing it and making things right. And that's going to have lots of angles and lots of layers, but it takes that equal intentionality in every aspect of this work.
Yeah, I would just add that I think, it's absolutely fundamental, as Susan said. I think that it is, if you look at this sort of mass warehousing of people, it's a continuation of that sort of systemic, way of treating people in a way that is not dignified. And I was saying, as this sort of, we've been thinking through this, I think I will, in 20 years, I think my daughters are going to ask me, Dad, how could you ever treat people like that? How could you be part of that sort of system? And I think that it's a continuation, unfortunately, of what we've seen historically in terms of how we're treating people, and our Indigenous, folks are a big part of that. And we have an obligation as operators, all of us, as the City of Edmonton, to really look at it through that lens and to understand, even as I think Gary was saying earlier, like, what is the concept of sheltering and shelter and home mean from an Indigenous worldview? And really sort of leaning into those kinds of perspectives and offering that to our folks. And that's part of the choice that we need to offer with different shelters.
All right, thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other questions. So thank you to our panel speakers. You've given us so much food for thought. Thank you for bringing your experience and your wisdom to us today, and your compassion and care. Really, really appreciate it. The fact that you are here is noted. The fact that you chose to participate is noted, and we will not forget. So thank you. With that, I think we may have I think Councillor Nicol had a motion or a phrase that you would
so what I'm going to do here, because Councillor Mckee is right, these are just for receipts for information. So before I go to administration, I got a very simple motion here that administration look at mitigation options and standards that can be expected of shelters to support clients and communities before requesting assistance from emergency services. And in it, just to introduce it a little bit, I'm interested in building some sort of mechanics with regards to the service provision. Not saying that the shelters are at fault here. This could be a question about money. This could be a question about permits. This could be a lot of questions. But they have some structural problems they need to deal with. And I think Mr. Reiner points out a very, very simple one. Putting 300 people in a room, it doesn't work. It's not going to work. So we need to set a different standard or it's different option to look at. So I guess with that, I'd like to ask just to administration, if it's Mr. Smythe or whoever, as to the framework and standard framework, because you have reached some of the broader concepts. But does administration feel or see a possibility of providing some of these supports so these shelters can deliver a standard care of service?
Councillor, obviously it cascades into the role of local government and our authority to be able to set those standards. So certainly I think we're exactly on the same page as the speakers this morning in terms of the next steps and what that future is. But I would maybe ask Nancy Jacobson from our law services area just to weigh in a little bit, just to describe a bit of what kind of authority and role might local government play in this body of work.
Thanks, Mr. Smythe. Appreciate that. So it's going to come down to what we're looking for in terms of what those standards and what those supports are. We have a number of tools that we can look at within a municipal government framework, but there are benefits and there are challenges of using each one. And every piece that we pull may lead to a different issue or matter that we have to resolve, or a benefit in a different area. So I'd say it's something we can definitely explore, but it's tough to give a very definitive answer of we would absolutely use this specific tool today until we've had that conversation on what those supports might be that we're looking for.
But Ms. Jacobson, there are options, are there not? There's some things we can do, some things we should do, and certainly other things we need to encourage people to do. Would that not stand as logical?
Yes, I think that's a really good way of phrasing it, is that there's options. We just need to determine whether or not they're the right ones and whether or not they're within our authority.
Yeah. And so that, Mr. Chairman, I think that given that's time and that Councillor McKee's suggestion, it should be requisitioned to council for them to discuss to fine tune as necessary would be important. So that's the motion I'd like to put on the table, and then if it's fine with committee, let's just requisition it up and then everybody can have a boo at it.
Yeah, I think that's fine. And if anyone has any tweaks, that's when we can do it. Do I have a second voice on this one?
Yeah, I'll say requisition.
All right. And that's it. Thank you very much, everyone.
Do we need to move the receipt of information for the two reports, Madam Clerk?
For clarity, once they've been requisitioned, there's nothing further to do. And so this motion won't actually go up with the report because it was requisitioned. So you'll just need to make it again at council.
Thank you. I was unclear. Thank you. Thank you, committee.
There's a lot of twists and turns in all of this. Okay, so that is done. We'll now move to our next item of business, which is 6.2, Indigenous Culture and Wellness Center. Quite appropriate. And we do have a presentation available, and then we will hear from speakers.
Just some very brief speaking notes here. I'm here with Eric Ambitman from Executive Director of End Poverty Edmonton. Jackie Ford, Jimmy Miller from our Social Development Branch are also on the call. During community engagements for the development of the End Poverty Edmonton strategy and roadmap, many Indigenous participants identified a long-standing need for a unique place and space where diverse Indigenous cultures could be brought together and celebrated. As a result, the strategy and roadmap reference the design and planning of an Indigenous Culture and Wellness Center. In 2016, City Council approved $3 million in funding for the first 3 phases of the center's development. Those phases are strategy, concept, and design. The project is identified as a city-led action in the End Poverty Edmonton roadmap, and members of End Poverty Edmonton Indigenous Circle have voiced a desire to lead the project from this point forward. Specifically, End Poverty Edmonton is requesting to have the project transitioned from city leadership to End Poverty Edmonton under the guidance of the Indigenous Circle, and for funding to develop a business case for the project. Funding will be provided from the approved profile and is within administration's authority to approve the transfer. The city is committed to advancing the reconciliation with our Indigenous residents. Approving the request to transfer the project as presented today would be a tangible way of honoring the goal of moving toward true reconciliation as stated in the End Poverty Edmonton roadmap. I'll now turn it over to Eric to provide some more details about this request. Eric.
Thank you, Rob. Councillor Paquette, if you would like, we could skip the presentation. Rob did cover much of what we would be covering, or I would be covering, and the speakers are certainly more eloquent, thorough, and persuasive than I would be. But if that's the direction you'd like to go in, I'd just like to acknowledge some people who helped us get to this point. Councillor Knack is nodding, but I think it's your decision, right? I don't know the protocol.
No, well, the time is yours to present as you will.
Okay, I'm in Golden, which is why my camera's not on. I'm worried about the internet connection, but I'd like the record to show that I am wearing a collared shirt and a blazer. More importantly, though, I want to acknowledge Councillors Paquette, Knack, and Zadok, as well as the mayor, for taking the time to meet with the Indigenous Circle. It meant a lot to us to be able to speak to you in advance of this meeting and sort of garner your support for what we're trying to do. I also think it's really important to acknowledge the city administration, in addition to Rob, Jackie, and Jamie. Ward Antonuk and Emily Skinner have been incredible supports to get us to this place. The city was visionary in acknowledging the need for this, and has been just a tremendous support beyond funding. And so we want to acknowledge that, as well as obviously creating End Poverty Edmonton to support this work. Like I said, the whole purpose here is really to transfer leadership from the city to the Indigenous community, so that the project is Indigenous led, as represented by the Indigenous Circle. So really, that's all I want to say is thank everybody for all the heavy lifting they've done to get us to this place, and to the administration for supporting the concept of ensuring that the Indigenous Community and Wellness Center is Indigenous, as an Indigenous led endeavor.
All right, thank you very much. And if that concludes the presentation, we can move on to speakers now. I'm interested in this promised eloquence. So we will start with Karen Bruno.
I was looking at the time, I was going to say good morning, but it feels closer to noon, so good afternoon. I also want to acknowledge the City of Edmonton and all the participants, and especially EPE for their support. All the councillors that were able to meet with us and the mayor ahead of time. It sure helped for preparing for today. It's, a little nerve-wracking sitting in front of everybody and having to present. And I always think I wanted to come and present something that's very eloquent and written down, but that wouldn't be me, and I'd look pretty scripted, and I can't do that. So I also want to acknowledge all the trailblazers that have been there way before my time, who helped us get to this point. I think it's important that this is a conversation that's been had for probably 40 plus years in the Indigenous community. It's been conversations we've had in ceremony, there's conversations we had in the community by different leaderships, that kind of thing. And so here today is feeling, pretty monumental, and can't help but feel a little bit emotional about what we're going to present today, and feeling good about it. A lot of work has been done in the past, and I always acknowledge that and honor that. Just thinking about this being Indigenous led in this day and age is a real step forward to reconciliation. The work that we've been doing with the city, the administrative part of the city, is been very decolonizing the processes we've used a lot of hybrid models. We've managed to work very much in our Indigenous ways of being, and the city accommodating and still being able to meet their mandates. So it's something that we're quite proud of. Of course, we had our storming and norming and getting together, and of course, as Indigenous people and volunteers, we come together, and we come with our hearts on our sleeves. We're relational people, and as you know or may not know, I've been working in the inner city for 30 years, and was a lived experience person, and came here with my mom, and so we accessed a lot of the services that were on screen today, and but the one thing I know, and working in the inner city, is that sometimes things just need to be Indigenous led, owned and operated, and that's what the community nowadays are saying. They're really when we did our e-scan, and Lloyd will be able to talk about that, but when we did our e-scan, they really did talk a lot about it being Indigenous owned and operated. We've met with a lot of people, different levels of government, businesses, community influencers so far, and we've talked with Canadian Native Friendship Center, and everybody is very much feeling excited about this prospect of moving forward. So I too am going to make it short because I want to respect your guys' time, and a lot of you already have spoken to us. So I look forward to any questions you may or may not have. So thank you for everything, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. Hi.
Hey, thank you. All right, we will now move on to Lloyd Cardinal.
Okay, so can you hear me clearly, Aaron?
Yep, we can hear you.
Thank you very much, and I'll just say hello to everyone that's here today. I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about the e-scan, and yeah, so like Karen said, I'm a fellow co-chair with the Indigenous Circle with End Poverty Edmonton, and we've been working at trying to solve some problems for our Indigenous community, our urban Indigenous population. I've been a co-chair for about 4 years now. I just want to speak about the e-scan a little bit. I guess I want to say that when we originally decided to get the e-scan on the ground and going, we had reached out to 11 different consultants from across Canada. And at the time that we did this, we worked for probably about almost 11 hours a day. And I'm pretty sure it was around the holidays. And we worked for about a week straight. And we picked our successful candidate to do the e-scan. At the same time, we used a number system, and it wasn't exactly who I chose particularly to be picked, but it's how it worked out. And the people that we ended up being successful were they're called Western Management and Consulting. And one of the ladies, I have to kind of give honor to both, are Karen Watson and Dr. Pat Mckee, because they were very instrumental in moving the e-scan forward. I do also want to say that I do have a list here of engagement results, and I know that I had shared them with some of the city councillors that are present today, but I'm going to share them again for the city councillors that didn't have a chance to hear them. So our engagement results, total of 1,614 participants contributed individual perspectives to inform the e-scan findings. 1,071 attended community conversations, 533 completed surveys, 71% of the respondents identified as Indigenous. 10 attendees were specialized sessions. A finding between community conversations and surveys was that their responses were very similar. Although the survey questions were comparable, they were not exactly the same as those discussed during community conversations. Responses varied only marginally between two engagement methods: community priorities, programs, and services. The survey findings: number one, ceremonial, cultural spaces are primary purpose of ICWC, 83%. Number two, meeting and gathering place, 64%. Number three, resource center, 61%. The top three activities preferred were: number one, Indigenous teachings, language, culture, and dance, 76%. Number two, ceremonial, powwows, wakes, weddings, round dances, 69%. Number three, arts, culture, 60%. The top three services that the respondents would use were: number one, healing and wellness, 86%. Number two, social and recreational, 70%. And number three, information, referrals, and support, 50%. So the type of setting and location, the survey finds indicated preferences for the ICWC to be: number one, welcoming and safe, 67%. Number two, near water, gardens, trees, green space, etc., 64%. Number 3, near public transportation, 55%. And number 4, central location, 46%. Now, back to what Karen was talking about, Indigenous-led. The eScan report notes the research suggests Indigenous-led refers to the degree of what Indigenous peoples are involved in the development, leadership, and operation and delivery of the programs and services to Indigenous people, to a degree which Indigenous culture and worldviews are incorporated into their work. So I just want to say that, you know, we reported back to our community, and you know what? That was the big ask of our community, that it be Indigenous run, Indigenous owned, and Indigenous operated. And you know, that's coming from the voice of our community, but we reached out to our community in many different areas. So like we went everywhere from schools and to organizations that provide services to Indigenous communities. But you know, it's very important to recognize that we wanted to get the voice of not only people that are living in experiencing poverty, like firsthand, but also kids that are going to school. And we also talked about how it could be the single mother who lives on the south side and who is going to school and getting educated at the time, at the current time. The point being that it was very important for us that we brought the voice of our community. Our eScan, too, I want everyone to know that it's public information, but also too the amount of people that have came together in order to do this work. And I know that Eric had mentioned some people in the beginning. I want to mention one in particular, Ward Aniak. It's been very supportive of the relationship between the Indigenous community and the city of Edmonton and moving the work forward. Another one, Emily Skinner. But, you know, other than that, you know, this is all I have to say about this today. And I thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to Beverly Allard. And I believe you're on mute.
There cuts into 20 seconds of my time. But thank you for having me here today. I'm actually here to talk a little bit about why it's so important to provide a cultural space for urban Indigenous people. And like from my perspective, one of the challenges faced by urban Indigenous people is the idea that Indigenous identity and urban spaces are somewhat incompatible. This understanding that Indigenous people are defined by their relationship to the land, although that's true and it's beautiful, it often fosters a romanticized idea typically associated with open forested spaces situated outside of the city. And it kind of bolsters the notion that an urban space of belonging for Indigenous people only existed in pre-colonial history prior to the establishment of our city. So a way of kind of rationalizing that unspoken notion that Indigenous people don't really fit in an urban setting. Within the city of Edmonton, we uphold diversity and inclusion as core values that we believe make us stronger. It's a better place to live. We have places like Le Cique Francophone, the Portuguese Cultural Center, the African Cultural Center, and these are all places where culture is celebrated, where people gather to connect, to practice, and to experience what nurtures their identity as distinct people of ancestry and heritage. So as Indigenous people, we too desire a space such as this. There are times when I feel like the average Edmontonian thinks that we as urban Indigenous people kind of have abandoned our identities and our culture, that by leaving the reserves, we've come looking to mainstream society for strengths of leadership. And all too often, we're reminded through news and social media of the violence, the challenges, the trauma, the disconnect to culture, and the displacement of our people. But our leadership is here today to tell you that we are strong and we have so much to offer. Last week, I attended a workshop presented by Louis Cardinal, and he spoke of growing up in Edmonton and that throughout his young life, he didn't see much in the city that reflected our culture, that there was no discussion in school, nothing to bring to light the history of Indigenous people who once flourished on our lands. And now, through strength of leadership, we've got Kitchiaski. It's a place to host spiritual ceremony, conduct sweat lodges, and to tell the story of all the Indigenous people of our area. And that space is a wonderful beginning, but as diverse people, so are our needs. Articles 11 and 12 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People speaks to our rights to practice and to revitalize our cultural traditions and customs. Our right to maintain, protect, and develop the past, present, and future manifestations of our culture, whether they're archaeological sites or artifacts, ceremonies, sharing of visual and performing arts and literature. And again, Kitchiaski will serve that purpose. But Article 23 of UNDRIP speaks to the right to determine and develop priorities and strategies for exercising our rights for development. So in particular, the right to be actively involved in developing and determining our health, housing, and other economic and social programs which affect us. And as far as possible, to, as Lloyd said, administer such programs through our own institutions. In fact, this right to self-determination and decision-making goes right to the heart of UNDRIP, and it's been identified as one of the major violations of the human rights of Indigenous people. Edmonton, through its work on the Declaration, which recognizes these past injustices, through its recent development of the Edmonton Indigenous Framework, and through its MOU with the Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations, has already affirmed its belief that Indigenous people have not surrendered their rights to autonomy at all. Edmonton's own Urban Aboriginal Accord speaks to the belief for Indigenous people to be represented not only in the city workforce, but in ongoing development of culturally sensitive municipal services that meet the community's needs and that create solutions for everybody. So this Indigenous Cultural Wellness Center, its design, its creation, and governance, this is our vision in creating prosperity, for enriching our autonomy, and for establishing a place that this council, that the City of Edmonton, and that the Indigenous people of this land can be proud of. So again, going back to the question, why is it important to provide cultural space for urban Indigenous people? Well, I think it's through our collective efforts that we've already shown that reconciliation, respect for diversity, and relationship with the Indigenous community is important to all of us. And again, I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we will now move to Ashlyn Yellowney. Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. So I will be providing a youth perspective on why we should have these resources in place. So growing up, I grew up in the city, and I, visibly Indigenous, didn't feel like I had really any spaces to exist or any spaces for me and my friends to really exist. We were always being pushed away, chased away, accused of trespassing. So there was never really anywhere to exist. And due to intergenerational trauma, there was never really, I guess, a safe space to go back home to. So we grew up very displaced. And it wasn't until I was 17 when I finally was able to reconnect with my identity and get, I guess, acquainted with a connection to the land. So in my cultural beliefs, I was told that we ask Creator to come and be a part of this world right now so we can bring gifts to this place. Those gifts are us. We're the gifts. Once settlers arrived, we lost that sense of purpose and we were forcefully removed from the lands. Now in present times, you see those people, those displaced people. They're in need, lost, forgotten, hurting. They're crying. Their spirits are calling out for help. I feel like the center could be that answering call for help. I feel like we can finally have a place to exist. And this has been talked about for multiple years. I do know that our first female mayor, Jan Reiner, in June 14th, 1993, she presented a Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples. And what she said there was she believed that we needed to have the right to self-governance, to self-determination, And she tried her best, but unfortunately, during those times, not everybody was on board. She wished for this cultural center. She wished for Indigenous voices to be heard, for these supports to become in place. Unfortunately, it didn't happen back then, and there's not a whole lot of supports right now. I noticed that a lot of people, vulnerable people, they get pushed around, from support, from place to place. They say, go here, they can help you there. And then if they can't help them there, they'll send them to another place, which is very, very discouraging. And I do notice that a lot of them will slip back into old ways of being, I guess. And it's because they've never really had that sense of being in the first place. Who are you, your identity? I know that growing up, kids, they knew who they were. They knew that they had a religion, they had a culture, multiple beautiful, very beautiful cultures that I know more about those cultures and multiculturalism than I do about my own culture. And I know that right now to this day, there's other youth children growing up in this city right now the same way. They don't have access to those supports. They don't have access to those resources. We need one space to gather, and we need to stop being displaced as Indigenous people. And honestly, I feel like we need to stop going back and forth. It's kind of like a cat and mouse game. I feel like we'll be promised one thing, and then, something in the media will come up that goes against that promise, or that makes that promise look like just words at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, it's really just words until things are being put into action. And I feel like now's the time to put these things into action. It's been over maybe roughly 23 to 24 years since January we did that Royal Commission on Aboriginal people, at the time Aboriginal people. And I don't feel like enough has been done. And I feel like we could do more. And sorry if I seem to be all over the place. I had a speech prepared, but I decided just to go from the heart. Because, at the end of the day, we're all people. When I go to sleep, when you go to sleep, we are people. And we need to be together and be there for each other. And rebuild these relationships. Although it wasn't very, very nice in the past, Canada, for the past hundreds of years, we can rebuild and we can rise again. We just need to do it in a good way, in a respectful way. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Perfect timing. And our last speaker is Mackenzie Brown.
Mackenzie won't be joining us today.
Okay, well, I guess that was wrapped up very well. I'm not seeing a lot of questions for speakers here. I will just wait a moment. If there are no questions, don't despair. It just means that you did a really good job. All right. It looks like everyone is satisfied. Thank you so much for your submissions today. That really helped. And we'll now move to questions for administration. And of course, speakers, you're welcome to stick around and watch the rest here. So I'm looking for questions of administration, and there is one from Mayor Iveson.
No questions, Mr. Chair. I've had a very good conversation with a number of the speakers yesterday about these issues, and I'm happy to move the recommendation based on the work to date and the recommendation from administration as well. And I'll speak to it after there are any questions.
So the recommendation is moved. I do have one question that I know will be on some people's minds. So for administration, a lot of people, they hear about something like this and their mind immediately goes to Lakota, or sorry, why is the name, you know what I'm talking about. The name is slipping my mind right now. Nope, not Kichiaski. Wet'suwet'en. Thank you very much. Yeah, and their minds immediately go to Wet'suwet'en. So for administration, can you just detail really quickly what the differences would be here?
Maybe we'll ask Jamie to weigh in on that one, Councillor.
Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Councillor Paquette, for the question. So, and you'll have to excuse me. I was in the early stages of my career when Wet'suwet'en was formed and developed. But from my perspective, Wet'suwet'en, I think, was a very good concept and a very good. It was created with good intentions by community, government, and all the different partners. I think maybe where Wet'suwet'en struggled is maybe it kind of tried to be all things to all people, and it really had a very big, broad scope that really touched on all kinds of issues, but really didn't have a really, like, I think, clear mandate or a clear direction that the Wet'suwet'en organization wanted to go in. And I think the advantage with an Indigenous Culture and Wellness Center that is owned and operated and governed by an Indigenous entity, governance, partnership, however we want to think of it, is that it will be very focused on the functions of this center. So it will be focused on a facility, its operations, as well as the programming within that specific center. And so I think having that really clear focus and that really clear mandate to develop this and operate it, I think will help, because as I said, from my experience, again, being sort of a junior member of the Indigenous Relations Office at that time, it seemed like, again, Wet'suwet'en was sort of chasing after different things or trying to do funding and trying to build all these different partnerships, and it was kind of all over the place. And that's not a criticism, but I think it was something that they struggled with, right? So I think the advantage we have here is that we do have a clear direction and focus to this work.
Right, and I'm assuming that governance checks and balances will all be sort of baked in, and it'll be quite a different creature.
Yes, absolutely. And so that's why we're really happy that the Indigenous Circle and End Poverty Edmonton is going to work with a project consultant, someone that can help them in the development of that business case, which will outline, again, the governance and partnerships required for facilities such as this, as well as those operations, and as well as again, narrowing that scope, right, to what are we actually going to do in this center, and what are the programs, or who are the partners that we need, and I think as they go through that work, they will again really get that really clear vision and scope for what they're doing.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I think that answers that question. So I have no more, and I don't see any others. So please vote.
If I could close real quick, Mr. Chair.
Right. And the mayor is going to close. Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah,
just quickly. I think the question about other examples is fair. I think what works here in favor of this approach is that there is a mission and a specific outcome and a scope to work towards with a facility, or made the pitch yesterday, network of leveraging existing facilities in the interim as well, including some that we're developing, like Kichiaski and Indigenous Peoples Experience at Fort Edmonton, the ceremony space at the library, a variety of things the city has put in motion, in addition to lots of other space that we have available in recreation centers, libraries, and other public spaces and program delivery spaces, so that we can support more gathering and convening and program delivery that is led by community. And that's the city at its best, is when we're supporting community development that's directed by and led by community and responsive to community priorities. And I think that makes sense, whether it's the African community or other newcomer communities, but especially it's important to do as a matter of reconciliation with our diverse Indigenous communities here in this area, where this has been a crossroads and a trading place and a gathering place for thousands and thousands of years. for people from the far north, people from the west coast, people from way down south in what's now the United States, people from the Great Lakes area and beyond have come to this area. And I think that honoring that tradition is important, and also principles around self-determination and community leadership and community agency are also critically important. Best practices for community development and essential ingredients of reconciliation. And so I think that this is most appropriate to hear the feedback from community and to empower and support, and not have the city just hand it off and say, hey, run with it, this is yours now, but very much continue to provide respectful, enabling support. And we had a great conversation yesterday about the help the city has provided and the help that United Way and other partners in this provide to enable community leadership and community direction. So anyway, just a thanks to everybody from Parby Edmonton and from the Indigenous table, and to those who provided feedback on this, and to Jamie and the folks at the city for supporting this work. I think this is the right direction to go, and I really strongly support this this shift in approach. I think we'll get a stronger outcome with very deliberate community leadership, with the continued support of the city and other NGO partners to really make something special happen here.
All right, thank you very much. Please vote.
We just need your vote, Mr. Chair.
Well, I'm trying. I am a yes.
Thank you. That's all the votes.
All right. Display the votes, please. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. So that takes us to 11:40. We've got about 35 to 40 minutes left on the agenda, but only 20 minutes left in the meeting. So we've got a couple options. We can extend orders, or we may have to send something up to council. And I'll just seek advice from the committee. Go ahead, Councillor Knack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think on items 6.4 and 6.5, we can move to postpone them to a future Community and Public Services Committee. I don't think they needed to be dealt with today. They're scheduled to be information reports. So I think they're next in line. So I'll actually just make that motion.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may suggest, the next agenda is quite heavy. If we wouldn't mind referring those reports to administration to work with ARC, we could find agendas that we're confident they'll fit on.
That's what I'm moving.
Thank you.
All right, please vote. Unless there's any debate, but otherwise, please vote. And I am a yes in case it doesn't show up here.
I'll vote yes in anticipation of my machine not working.
I'll vote yes.
2 votes.
We have all the votes.
Display the vote, please. Oh, here it is. And that is unanimous. Okay, and so that leaves us with 9.1 and 6.6. And so we have to break right now for 9.1. Councillor Knack, did you have something to suggest?
Well, I see Councillor Nickel unmuted before I did, so maybe he can jump in first.
Yep.
Do we have any speakers on 6.6, Councillor?
We do. We've got 5.
Yeah, I figured as much. Just a request for information for the administration. Can these bylaws be postponed one more time so we can hear from the speakers proper?
From our end, Councillor, postponement would be fine.
Okay, then that's what I will do, Councillor Paquette, because it's not just these speakers, but I've had a number of community leagues and festivals raise issues, and I do think it needs an adequate vetting. If you understand, if I'm making myself clear, sir.
Makes perfect sense.
Okay, so I'll leave that with ARC. Then I'll move that referred to ARC to find an appropriate time.
Okay, and with apologies and gratitude to the folks who came to speak today, the intention here is to give you a non-rushed format in order to share your thoughts. So I hope you understand. But if there's no debate, please vote. And I am a yes.
Yes.
Mayor Iveson? That's all the votes. Thank you.
All right, please display the vote. And that is unanimous. Okay. And finally, I will need a motion to go into private.
Moved.
Okay. And this is based on section 17 and 24. Okay. So
just before we go into private, I can keep going till 12:15 if you wanted to have that discussion.
Okay. Thanks. No.
Okay.
Okay. Please vote. I'm a yes. I'll log out of this and log back in.
I'm a yes.
Mayor Iveson, if he's still on the call.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all the votes.
All right. Thank you. Please display the vote. And that is unanimous. And we will now be going to private.
Am I able to move the recommended shortlist as identified in the attachment?
Thank you. If there's no debate, please vote. I'm a yes.
Yes.
Apologies, the ballot is coming.
Oh, okay. I see it now.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that is carried. Any notice of motion or motions without customary notice? Not hearing any. We are adjourned. See you all at the next meeting.